into camera, but apart from these various links, I also get various advertisements here. So these are the advertisements: Nikon, Canon, Samsung, Fujifilm, and so on and so forth. Now, these are the advertisements that they play a very, very crucial role for Google search engine, because this is where all the money is coming from. So Google actually get money from these advertisements only, right? Now, the question is that which advertisement should Google place when a particular user enters a keyword? Now, one interesting thing that happens in such sponsor search auctions is that these are also called as the pay-per-click auction. Sorry. So what do I mean by pay-per-click auction is that the Google search engine does not get any money until and unless somebody clicks on that advertisement. That means Nikon is not going to give any money to Google search engine until and unless someone clicks on this particular ad. Okay, so therefore they will get the money only when someone clicks on the ad. So this particular problem can be very nicely framed as the multi-arm bandit problem. Why? Now imagine that each of these advertisements are actually acting as arms. Okay, and the gambler that we had, gambler is my Google search engine. So now Google search engine is actually deciding which advertisement to place, that means which arm to pull, right? Again, Google will not know the reward. What is the reward of the advertisements here? What is the reward of the arms here when advertisements are playing the role of the arms? The rewards are how somebody is clicking on it. So of course there is some valuation model, we are not going to it, but let's say everybody gives a rupees of 1 when it gets a click, right? So clicking is the reward. Okay, so until and unless someone clicks, no reward is there. So suppose I put in camera and it flashes these advertisements. If it does not get click, no reward. It's a 0-1 model in that case. Yes, again, I'm making the problem really, really simple in this case, but I hope you get the analogy. So the thing is that, so now arms are the advertisement, and Google will not be able to know the reward of a particular advertisement until and unless it plays the advertisement here or it pulls the arm. Right? So that's how the analogy is. So if I kind of solve the multi-arm bandit problem, I kind of have a way to solve this particular problem. What is the problem? How Google should allocate the advertisements in its search engine. And it's a very, very important problem. The second example that comes from is the crowdsourcing model. So, you know, crowdsourcing are very popular these days, especially these days in the terms of when Corona is hitting us. I was just seeing the news, there's a huge money spending on the crowdsourcing model because you are trying to give the jobs to the people, right? So what is a crowdsourcing model? Suppose there is a requester who has a task with him, and then
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so there is a requester who is actually posting a particular task, and you know, it just posts the task, and this task goes to various workers that are available. Now there are various crowdsourcing models. In one particular model, you can actually choose which worker to give the task to, right? So now imagine that these workers are acting as the arms. That means you are telling the workers what to do. You are actually choosing the workers to do the job, and they also have they does the task with their own quality, and whatever the quality with which they do the task is some kind of reward associated to it. So again, this particular problem is you know, you can actually model a multi-arm bandit problem here. The third very interesting application comes from the smart grids, and in particular where I'm working is the demand response in smart grids. So what is a demand response in smart grid? So what is happening in smart grids these days is that consumers are actually, they are becoming more and more aware of how much electricity they are spending. And, typically what happens is there is something where the price of the electricity goes high during the peak load, and they are low during the off peak hours, right? And typically what happens when I talk about the demand response, suppose there is a distributor company, the company who is distributing the electricity, they wants to reduce the consumption, and they wants to, ask the consumers to reduce their electricity load by paying something. Right. So again, this can be modeled as the multi-arm bandit problem, where each of these consumers can be act as the arms. That means which consumer should I select, and the rewards are actually coming from the behavior, how these consumers are behaving. That means how much offer shall I give them, or how much money shall I pay them so that they reduce their consumption. So again, you are doing some kind of trade-off, and again, they behave based on their times. There's some randomization associated to it. So these are the three important problems on which I have actually worked on. So I felt it is relevant. But more importantly, these are not only the three problems where multi-arm bandit problem is applicable. There are tons of it. To give you some more examples, clinical trials is the oldest example from where this multi-arm bandit motivation started. The first paper by Thompson was actually with the motivation from the clinical trials. That means, what kind of drugs shall I try on the patient? So drugs kind of acted as the arms. So which drugs shall I try to the patient such that they recover? The other things that I'm working on currently are the reviewing website, where you post the reviews, which reviews are good, which reviews are bad, which reviews should you pay attention, and so on and so forth. And of course, the recommender systems. Let's not go into the details of this. Okay, questions? Okay, maybe you can ask towards the end. So, as I told you that what we know for now is what essentially is a multi-arm bandit problem. I haven't told you much about it. It's just that you're pulling some arms, you're getting some reward, and then you're getting the reward only when when you pull an arm. So it's exploration only gives you the reward, and the rewards are not consistent in a sense that if I pull 2 times, then I may get different reward. But how I haven't told you any other properties of this problem. That means how rewards are generated, how you're getting the rewards of these slots, and so on and so forth. So, and there are various versions of multi-arm bandit problem that is available. But when we talk about how the rewards are generated and the vanilla classical multi-arm bandit problem, where I'm pulling an arm and getting a reward, there are three fundamental types of multi-arm bandit problem. So, which are stochastic multi-arm bandit problem, adversarial multi-arm bandit problems, and the Markovian multi-arm bandit problems. So, as you can actually relate from the title talk, we will be talking about stochastic multi-arm bandit problem, where where the rewards are stochastic. I will be talking about adversarial multi-arm bandits problem tomorrow and its relations with game theory, and we will skip the Markovian multi-arm bandits for now. But what I will do, I will just give one slide introduction to each and every one, and then we will go in detail about the stochastic multi-arm bandit problem. Okay. So what is a stochastic multi-arm bandit problem? So there will be a little bit of terminologies, the mathematical terminologies here. So what will be a stochastic multi-arm bandit problem? So, so the problem is same at each. So you have time t that is going from 1 to dash to capital T. Okay. And at each time you're choosing an arm IT. Okay, so I'm just choosing the arm IT at each time, and the goal and the problem is how should I choose these arms, right? Which arm to play? Okay, Now, in stochastic bandit problem, what happens is that if I choose a particular arm, the reward of that arm is sampled from a probability distribution of the chosen arm. So I have n arms, 1, 2, dash, 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 2, n arms. Each of these arms has a certain distribution associated to it. Let's say F1, this is F2, this is Fn. Now this distribution is from where the rewards are generated. Okay. Now when I talk about a classical scenario where each arm is actually giving you the reward of 0 or 1, right? So when I pull a arm, so that's what we started. When I pull an arm, either I get a reward of 0 or I get a reward of 1. So you can model this particular thing via the Bernoulli random variable or Bernoulli distribution, right? So now imagine that when you are in a very simple setting where the arms and the rewards are either 0 or 1, then imagine that these distribution when I'm talking about are nothing but probability that I pull the arm and I get a reward of 1. So now each arm will be associated with probability P1, P2, dash, dash, dash to Pn. So what is Pi in this case? Pi is basically the probability that I get a reward reward 1 if I pull arm I. That's what I meant. Now the most important thing that you should know here is that although this probability distribution, the reward distribution is present, it is not known. So when you are choosing which arm to play, you don't know what is P1, P2, Pn. It's there, it's kind of a hidden parameter, but you don't know this. Okay. However, when you pull the arm, you receive a reward xit comma t here. That means pulling the arm it at time t, and this random variable is either 0 or 1 with probability pit. Again, you don't know this, but you can observe these random variables. Okay, and the idea is to estimate these probabilities by observing these random variables over a period of time. Okay, questions? Okay. So what happened here was the essential problem was same, which was the multi-arm bandit problem. We just fixed the rewards how they are coming. They were coming from a probability distribution, in particular hidden probability distribution. We knew the form of the distribution, but we didn't know the exact parameters of the distribution. In adversarial bandits problem, the problem becomes much trickier. We will see tomorrow. Is that the rewards doesn't come from a distribution but are actually selected by the adversarial. Okay, so imagine that there is someone who wants to defeat you very badly. Okay, he just wants to, he just want to ruin you. Okay, so what you are doing, you are selecting an arm, and simultaneously that particular person who wants to destroy you is also selecting the reward of these arms. And this person can select these rewards in any arbitrary fashion, no matter how it does. Okay, so now the rewards are not coming from a fixed distribution, but they are actually selected by the adversary, and that can make things really, really worse for you. Okay, the only thing that is, good here is that these rewards are selected not after you selected the arm, otherwise this problem will not make any sense, but these rewards are selected simultaneously. That means, you are choosing the arm and the adversary is selecting the reward simultaneously. So adversary doesn't know that at time t which arm you're going to select. So he's selecting the rewards beforehand, but in the beginning of t. Okay, and then you receives a reward RITT, and reward of other arms are not received. So this is the adversarial bandit framework. We'll see this in detail tomorrow. The third problem is coming from RL literature, reinforcement learning literature, that you already had the sessions about. So here what happens is that the reward of each arm follows a Markov process. So what happens is that when you pull a particular arm, its reward changes with certain probability transition matrix, and the reward of only the chosen arm is updated at each time. So it's like certain valuations are certain rewards are going up, but they are going up with certain probability transition matrix, but are changing with respect to certain probability transition matrix. But these rewards are going to change only for those arms which you have selected. Other arms remains fixed. So you can think about this particular problem in, let's say, the sponsor search option that we talked about. So when you're clicking on a particular ad, for example, Nikon, okay, so the reward that Nikon is giving you, we consider all the 0, 1, but the more clicks Nikon receive, it may actually be in a better position to pay the Google search engine higher. So, so it's like that. So whenever Google search engine plays Nikon, it receives a reward. There is a good chance that next time when it plays Nikon there, he will get a higher reward. Right? So the rewards are changing at each time, and they are actually following a certain pattern. So typically we use RL kind of frameworks to solve these kind of problems. So not going into the details. Okay, so far so good. So remember, we still are talking about stochastic multi-arm bandit problem. Okay, so and I will go back to our gambler problem because it's nice to find the analogy. And so what is the goal? The goal of the problem is to earn as much money as possible over a period of time t. So I have capital T days, gambler is staying for capital T days. Daily he is pulling one arm, getting some reward, and his main goal is to maximize his reward over a period of time t. Okay, and the decision which he is making, which arm to pull. Okay, and this particular problem is fascinating because this is the problem we face daily in our life, where we actually encounter what is called the exploration exploitation dilemma. So suppose I have two arms, and I have been pulling I have the example in the next slide. I've been pulling the first arm and I've been getting some reward. I haven't explored the second arm at all. Should I explore or should I just continue with the first arm? At least it is giving me some reward. Maybe second arm will not give me any reward, right? So this is what the exploration exploitation dilemma is. Should I continue with the arm that has given me good reward, or shall I explore? If I had to explore, since the rewards are randomized, how much to explore? So that's the problem. So as I told you, this is one particular example, a very, very simple example. So there are two arms and each arm can either give you 1 rupee or gives nothing. This is the standard problem that we are talking about. And arm 1 gives a reward 1 with 80% probability and arm 2 gives a reward with 60% probability. So this is my P1 and P2. I have marked them red because I don't know this. Okay, for first 10 days, suppose I pull arm 2. So arm 2 is giving me the reward only with 60% probability. And it ended up giving me arms like this. So should I be satisfied with whatever rewards I have got so far, or should I switch to arm 1? Okay, what if the initial pulls of arm 1s are 0, 0? Right, that can happen. It's 80%, it's not 100% probability. Then should I assume that this arm is bad and get back to arm 2, or should I explore further arm 1? These are the kind of questions that we want to solve. Okay, so now what we understood. So we understood what the map problem is. We understood what we meant by stochastic rewards. We understood applications of it. Now we want to actually solve the problem, right? So everything is good so far. Now how to solve this problem? How do I make gambler rich? So again, to recap, we have n arms and I have t rounds. Each arm I gives me a reward xit, very simple setting with probability pi. And whenever I pull an arm at each time I pull an arm it, this is what my algorithm is doing. And the total accumulated reward is basically how much I got this. Right? So before we design, so what we are trying to do, we are trying to design a policy or an algorithm which actually gives me how to pull this IT, right? Which actually finds this particular index. For each time, it gives me an index, ki nahi, you have to pull this arm. How do I do that, right? So, but before I do that, whenever I'm trying to develop an algorithm, whenever I'm trying to design an algorithm, I also have to have some goal in mind, right? What is it that I want to achieve? Well, I want to achieve, I want to maximize my reward over a period of time. But what is this maximization, right? Should I pull the arm that is that with should I pull the arm with whatever highest probability is, but I don't know this probability. How do I compare the performance of the two algorithms, right? So I need to have a metric for it. Like we do in machine learning, I need to define certain loss function for this particular problem also, so that I know that when I run this algorithm, I'm getting this much loss function, some kind of that. So in this particular framework, what we do, we define what is called the regret. Now, what is the regret? Okay, so let's talk about, let's try to understand this particular thing in detail. This term, the second term in my regret definition, is basically, what is this? This is the total reward that I accumulated. Right, I played IT at I1, I2, I3, and so on and so forth. This is the total reward that I accumulated. Right, so far so good. I want to maximize this, okay? And what is this? This first term. This first term is basically the if suppose I had to choose one particular arm that I can pull daily, okay, then which arm it be the arm which maximizes the total sum. Okay, that is this reward. So if I had to pick one arm, what is the best arm? So again, we are actually saying best arm in terms of the total reward that is accumulated over a period of time. So if I choose arm 1, I got this reward, arm 2, I got this reward, arm 3, I got this reward. If I had to choose one arm at each and every time's instance, then which should be the best arm and what should be the reward that I would have gotten by pulling that particular arm each time. Okay, so you can imagine that the regret is basically the difference I got. That means the regret is basically the loss due to not selecting the best arm. That's why the negative term here. Whenever I select the best arm, whenever my IT is basically the best arm, I'm kind of getting 0 in those particular rounds. And whenever I don't select, I'm getting certain error, certain regret. Okay, so now once I define this matrix, this kind of loss function, then what is it that I want? I want to design an algorithm which gives me these ITs, which gives me these IT value so as to minimize the regret. I want to be as close to the best as possible. Okay, so far so good, but this is little bit vague when I talk about the regret. Why? Because these are random variables, right? These are not exactly some parameters or which I know already. So I really can't do anything about it. So I have to do the expected regret. Okay, so well, it's easy. Instead of regret, I try to minimize the expected regret, where expectation is taken with respect to all those probabilities that we talked about. PN, right? But here's an issue that things would have been easier if I could have switched expectation and max. I cannot do that because max is not a linear operator. I can only switch it when I have the linear operator. So this is going to be expectation of this term minus expectation of this term. So this is going to be expectation of max I summation t is equals to 1 to capital T xit minus expectation of summation t is equals to 1 to t xit comma t. This is so far this is okay. However, I cannot exchange these two because max is not a linear operator. Okay, you can actually think about it why you cannot exchange. So there is a small problem here because this is a random variable, expectation not going inside, I will be facing a lot of trouble. So I just, instead of exactly minimizing this regret, I actually minimize something else, and that thing is known as the pseudo regret. So what is a pseudo regret? In pseudo regret, what I do, as I told you, I cannot exchange it, but in pseudo regret, I kind of exchanged it. Okay, and then I say, forget about the expectation regret. Can you define, can you figure out an algorithm? Can you find an algorithm? Can you design an algorithm which kind of minimizes the pseudo regret? Where I just pull the max term out. Note that we are not minimizing the expected regret by minimizing pseudo regret. So a policy, an algorithm which minimizes the pseudo regret may not be minimizing the expected regret. But this is something really complicated and we just wanted to make things easier, so we switched to pseudo regret. There's a relation which says that, pseudo regret is always going to be less than equals to expected regret. This is something which I would leave you to think about. So it's essentially, when you have the max inside, this particular term is going to be big because now here you are allowed to choose different arms and then you are taking the expectation, right? So this term is going to be bigger as compared to this term. Again, leaving it to you, not very important for us, okay, but it's a good exercise to just kind of prove it. Okay, so far so good. What is the final problem? Final problem is set of arms n is given, the total time horizon t is given. You don't know the probability distribution of each arms, and since we are in 0, 1 probability, we kind of, we have this expectation of xit is going to be probability pi. So here I have just made a small change that instead of pi, I will be using mu I because this is also represent the mean. Okay, so that means we generally represent by mu, so let's just go with mu i's. So you don't know these means, okay, but they are there. This is how your rewards are generated. And what is your goal? You want to just because the pseudo regret is minimized. We chose pseudo regret because it's simple. And what is revealed is that at each time t, you pulled the arm IT, so you get the reward XITT. This is what is revealed. And how do you make the decision about IT plus 1? You see whatever rewards you have gotten so far and somehow you make the decision. That's up to your algorithm. Right? So we want to design the algorithm. We are coming to it. But let's first try to characterize, let's try to see a little bit more detail into this. So how do I minimize the pseudo regret? So suppose I denote mu star by max I mu I. What it is? It is the maximum possible reward that I get. So if you remember, RT is basically max over I summation t is equals to 1 to t mu. Sorry, oops, not that. Summation t equals to 1 to n. I had an expectation here, xit minus expectation of summation t equals to 1 to capital T xit comma t. Right, this was my pseudo regret expression. Now, if I push the expectation inside, see this particular term. Okay, again I have a sum, I can push it inside. So this is going to be what? This is going to be summation t is equals to 1 to t mu I. Right, because xit is just a Bernoulli random variable which is 0 or 1. Its expectation is going to be what is the probability, which we kind of took it as mu I. And I also have the max term here. Okay, so for which I this term is going to be maximized, this term is going to be maximized for that particular arm which has the highest mean. Okay, and the entire term which, so this is going to be maximum for the arm I star which has the highest mean. And the reward, the maximum, the best possible reward that you could get is basically T mu star. Right? Similarly, this particular term, which is the expectation of summation, blah, 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 I can pull the expectation inside. So expectation of xit comma t is nothing but mu it. This is going to be this. So this is a very simple terminology. Now this makes our life simpler because I can now define different notation and you will see a very different view of this. Okay, so what I do, I kind of define one more terminology, which is TI. What is TI? TI is nothing but number of times I is pulled when I'm going for capital T rounds. Okay, so indicated random variable is 1 when this predicate is true. So this is going to be 1 only when it is equals to I. So it's basically representing number of times arm I is pulled. And I say delta I is mu star minus mu I. Okay, then what is this regret? Okay, this regret is going to be, I'm going to achieve some regret only when I pull the arm I. So this is going to be summation I is equals to 1 to n delta I into Ti. Okay, why? Delta I is, I'm getting the regret because of not pulling the arm I star, but pulling the arm mu I. And how many times I pulled arm I pulled precisely Ti times. So Ti times के लिए I am getting the regret of delta I, and then I'm summing over all. This is how much regret I'm going to get. Okay, so now if I really want to design an algorithm which kind of avoid this thing, which kind of minimize this particular regret, then I should make sure that this Ti, right? So Ti is representing how many number of times the arm I is pulled. This Ti, if I is not equals to I star, this Ti should be as low as possible. Okay, and when I is not equals to I star, that means it is a suboptimal arm. So what I meant is saying that number of times that I pull a suboptimal arm should be as less as possible, as low as possible. I should be trying to pull the optimal arm more often as compared to the suboptimal arms. That's the essential idea. So this is what I have told you. Now, when I design an algorithm, generally there is a randomization because the way you are receiving the rewards, you generally take the expectation with respect to algorithm, but you can kind of skip this. Okay, so now we kind of understood what we want. We want to avoid the suboptimal pulls. So we are still into the exploration exploitation dilemma. It may so happen that we are kind of exploiting a suboptimal arm. We don't want to do that because that would kind of increase the number of times I'm pulling the I'm pulling the arm. Right? So this is something which I don't want. The exploration, again, I don't want to explore much because this may again increase the number of suboptimal arms. Right? So the idea is I should do both simultaneous. I should not keep on exploring or I should not keep on exploiting. Okay, I should be able to see which arm I haven't explored so much. I should go and explore it, and so I should do both simultaneously. And the essential principle on which this stochastic multi-arm bandit works is what is called the optimism in the face of uncertainty. That means I should be, that means I should be as optimal as possible. Given the circumstances, given the past experiences that I have, in that past experiences, I should assume that a particular arm should behave properly or it should be really good. I mean, if it happens to give me the reward with in most favorable way, then what is the best arm? I should choose that particular best arm. That's the essential idea. Okay, so the issue is how to define optimism. So what I said is, what we kind of assume that, or what we kind of discussed in the previous thing, that I want to choose optimistically. I want to go as optimistic as possible, but how to define such optimism? So what we do is typically we kind of create some bounds on each arms. Okay, and this will give result to bound algorithms, upper confidence bound algorithm. But the essential idea is this. So let me explain this figure. So now consider that these are the arms that are available to you, and these blue lines basically represent the mean. Okay, so the scale is, let's say, right? So higher this blue bar, higher is the mean of this arm, and in this particular case, this green wala arm is basically my best arm. Again, I don't know this. Okay, it's there, but I don't know these blue lines. I don't know whether this is the best arm. So what I will do initially, I will assume that all arms are the best arms. Okay, and how do what I will do, I will kind of have this upper bound like this. This is what is this particular term. Okay, and then I will just assume, since all of them are on the same line, I will just choose randomly. Let me pull this arm. Okay, when I pull this arm, I may get a reward of 0 or I may get a reward of 1. If I get a reward of 0, this confidence which I had on this particular arm, it is going to reduce. Okay, and I will continue. So now instead of pulling this arm, I'm going to pull the other arms. So I'm saying optimism is coming from the point because I'm assuming everything is good. Since I've already received a 0, my confidence is little bit going down. Okay, but again, when I had to pull, I will see this bar only, which is the best possible behavior of this particular arm. And the idea is, the longer you keep on pulling, these bars, keep on shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and they will kind of surround this mean, so that you will kind of know. So for example, for this arm, if I have a sufficient number of pulls, these bounds which I have, these orange bounds, will kind of shrink towards the mean, and essentially this is the kind of the optimistic view of this arm. And after sufficient number of pulls, this will remain the best arm, and so I will be kind of converging to it. That's the idea. Right? So the next question that comes to our mind is, how do we define these bounds? Okay, so we define these bounds using statistic techniques, and in this particular case, we will use a simple Hofting's inequality. So what a Hofting's inequality says, again, I'm in a very simple setting, what a Hofting's inequality says that suppose I have I have xi random variables, so I have x1, x2 dash dash dash. I'm just trying to explain what is a Hofting's inequality. We will see the relation in a couple of minutes. But suppose I have x1, x2 dash 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 to xn. They are the IID Bernoulli random variables. IID means independent and identically distributed. That means each random variable is coming from the same distribution and it is independent of each other. And they are Bernoulli, that means rewards are 0 or 1. Okay, and if I happens to take the average of these things, then I have this inequality. Now this is a very interesting inequality. Why? Because suppose this is IID, right? So suppose I have the probability of giving a particular reward is mu I, right? So x1 is coming from a distribution with mean mu I, x2 is coming from a distribution with mean mu 2, right? So what is expectation of x bar? Expectation of x bar is going to be 1 by n expectation of summation I is equals to 1 to n xi. This is going to be 1 by n expectation I can pull inside. So summation I is equals to 1 to n, and expectation of x, let me say j here, okay, just to avoid this I wala confusion. Okay, so now expectation of xj, these are IID random variables, so it is going to be mu I. So it is going to be mu I. This is going to be n mu I divided by n. This is going to be mu I. Right? So this term is going to be mu I. And what is this? This x bar. What is this x bar? X bar is nothing but the average reward I have received so far. So we will represent it as, let's say, mu I hat. This is, suppose I have pulled an arm n number of times, then what is the average reward that I have got, which is number of successes divided by total number of times I have pulled the arm. So what this inequality is giving me, this inequality is giving me the relationship between true mean and the estimated mean. Now note that this particular term I know. Why I know? Because I have been observing it. I'm pulling the arm and I'm observing it. This particular term I don't know. And this inequality is kind of binding the two terms which I know and I don't know. And these parameters I can select. They are in my hand based on how much probability I need, how much things I need. Yeah, that's essentially the idea. This is what I have written, just that it should be mu I here. It should be mu I here, and if I pull a particular arm I and I number of times, then this is the inequality. Just copy from here. Okay, now how do I use it for my advantage? I can put a certain value of delta. Okay, in particular, I will put delta is equals to this term. If I put delta, just substitute this term here, you will get, see, delta is this, just substitute delta here, and I have Ni, which is the number of times arm I is pulled, and delta is this. You will solve this particular thing, you will be getting t to the power minus 4. This is pretty good. So what it is telling you is that if I happens to pull a particular arm Ni number of times, then my true reward, my true mean and my estimated mean are basically dependent on how many number of times I have pulled the arm I, and as Ni increases, this margin is going to decrease only with probability t to the power minus 4, with high probability. Okay, and this is the crucial term that we will be using to devise our algorithm. And this is called the upper. So what is the upper confidence bound here? So suppose I have an arm I and I have pulled it as Ni number of times, then the upper confidence bound is nothing but mu I hat comma Ni plus square root of 2 ln t divided by Ni. This is what is called the upper confidence bound. And what is the significance of upper confidence bound? You remember that particular diagram that I had, right? So if my mu I is here, and my upper confidence bound is, let's say, this. What is this? This is this particular term. Let me write mu I hat plus, right? Mu I hat plus, right? This Hofting's bound is saying that my true reward, my mu I lying above this mu I hat plus, the probability is very, very low. The mu I has to lie below mu I hat positive. It cannot lie there. So this is kind of representing the optimistic term that I was talking about. That's the idea. And this gives us our algorithm, which is called the upper confidence bound algorithm. Simple. Okay, and the algorithm is extremely simple once you have decided this. So I have the number of arms n as input, I have the time horizon t as output. I want to come up with an allocation I1, I2 dash 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 to IT. What I will do, for each time, this is just the initialization, and mu I hat is basically, I should have Ni here. This mu I hat is basically the empirical estimate that I have. It's same as what I talked about, number of successes that I have divided by total number of times that I have pulled the arm I. What I'm going to do, I'm going to allocate the arm IT, which has the maximum upper confidence bound. That is, when I choose this arm optimistically, which is the best possible arm. And the simple algorithm is really, really powerful. And the powerful of this particular algorithm, you can actually see from here. So what is the regret, right? The pseudo regret that we talked about of this upper confidence. So when my A is my upper confidence bound algorithm that we talked about, the algorithm, the regret of that particular algorithm is this term. Okay, so forget this term. This term is kind of a constant. The only thing that matters to me is basically this term LNT. Okay, so basically this regret, when I say this regret is actually of order LNT, which is pretty good. And how good it is, it can be seen via the lower bound on the regret. So in literature, it has also been shown that, no matter what algorithm you choose, you are always going to incur this particular regret. Not going into the details, but I'm just trying to give you an intuition here. This is the KL divergence. Again, forget about KL divergence, but the essential idea is the term in LNT. Okay, so what this theorem is saying that RTA is actually omega of LNT, and this is saying RTA is order of LNT. That means the simplest algorithm, the simple UCB algorithm, upper confidence bound algorithm, is achieving the regret in order notation में it is achieving the regret which is the best possible regret. I cannot hope to achieve better than this if I talk about in terms of the order notation with respect to capital T, and capital T is what matters to us. I'll discuss this in more detail tomorrow when we'll talk about the sublinear regret. But this is good. Okay. So far so good. This algorithm is good. Let's go further. How do I prove this regret? Okay. And the proof is not very hard to see if you understood the logic. The logic was that I want to actually bound the number of times I pull the suboptimal arms. Okay, this is what I want to bound. And when I'm going to pull the suboptimal arms, let's just try to brainstorm here. I'm going to pull the suboptimal arm only when the upper confidence of optimal arm is less than the upper confidence of suboptimal arm. So again, when I'm talking about the proof, I'm just going to walk through the proof. I'm not going to give exact details of it. Okay. So I'm going to, I'm going to see when I'm going to pull the suboptimal arm, and I'm going to pull the suboptimal arm only when this bound is less than equals to this bound. What is this bound? This bound basically represent the upper confident, the optimistic view of the best arm that I have. And this represent the any arm I. Right? And the idea is to bound the suboptimal pulls. How I'm going to do this, again, I'm going to leave it as an exercise to you. You can see that when, suppose for a particular I, suppose for a particular arm I, this condition holds. That means the upper confidence of arm I is greater than equals to this particular term. In this particular case, this is only possible when at least one of the following condition hold true. Either this should hold true, or this should hold true, or this should hold true. So what you can do, you can actually prove it that if none of these condition holds true, that means this is strictly greater, this is strictly less, this is greater than equals to, then this condition cannot happen. This will come from a direct contradiction. Okay, so at least one condition has to be satisfied. Now, what are the implications of these conditions? Not going to the formula here, but trying to understand this intuition. So this is basically saying that my bound mu hat I star n star is less than equals to mu star minus this. Now, if you really think about it, the way we constructed this quantity, the way we construct, this is my delta term that we had, the way I constructed this quantity, I kind of made sure from Hofting's inequality that this does not happen with high probability. So in this particular case, this condition cannot happen, and if it happens with probability t to the power minus 4. So as t is going higher and higher, this probability is going lower and lower. This condition is telling that the bound is, mu I hat I and I is greater than equals to this. Again, the same condition is there, the way I have created the bounds. This cannot happen with probability. This can happen only with probability t minus 4. It cannot happen with probability 1 minus t to the power minus 4. And when t is large, this is really a high probability. Right? So what I told you is that this is low probability event. My third condition is a little bit tricky, which says that mu star is less than mu I plus 2, this thing. Okay, even if this happens, this can happen. So this is saying that, mu I and mu star are very close together or something like that. So in that, we have to bound this Ni term. Okay, so let's focus on this condition in the next slide. So I told you this is for the first condition. I told you this is for the second condition. The third condition is basically, so I'm saying when my Ni is large enough, this condition cannot happen. And what is Ni? Ni is basically the number of times arm I is pulled. Okay, Ni is the suboptimal arm. Right? Ni is the suboptimal pulls, number of suboptimal pulls. And what this particular thing is saying, that if my Ni is large enough, in particular it is 8 ln t divided by delta I square, then even the third condition cannot happen. Why? Because if I simply substitute Ni as 8 ln t by delta I square, see, this was the thing, right? So I kind of took mu I here and this here. So mu star minus mu I minus 2, this thing is going to be mu star minus mu I. Now substitute Ni here. Ni is greater than equals to this. So this is going to be less than equals to something. So this is going to be, sorry, this should be Ni. So when I substitute Ni as 8 ln t divided by delta I square, so 2 comes here, so 8 get cancelled out, t is small, so I can just keep it as greater than equals to t get cancelled out. So this particular term will become mu star minus mu I minus delta I. Now what is this? This is actually delta I. Right? So in this particular case, what I have mu star minus mu I minus 2 square 2 ln t divided by Ni is basically greater than equals to 0, which is kind of contradicting this particular. So I needed strictly less than 0. Right? So even when I have Ni, just try these inequalities. So even when I have large enough Ni, this condition cannot happen. That's it, I'm done. Okay, so what does it mean? It means that if I have pulled Ni enough number of times, then that condition will not happen. These conditions will not happen for, with high probability. Then I can bound my number of suboptimal pulls. What is the number of suboptimal pulls? So after I pull each and every arm at least these many number of times, I don't have to worry about it. Baki events are with small probabilities. So I can just sum it over I, this entire thing. Now this is the number of times I'm pulling arm I. What is the regret I'm getting due to it? I'm getting delta I regret. This is my pseudo regret definition. Right? So delta I will get cancelled out. It will be simply summation I 8 ln t by delta I. And If you remember the theorem that I told you, this is essentially this term. Okay. I'm not going into this detail. This is, as I told you, this is constant. It doesn't matter much, but this is coming due to the summation over that we kind of take the expectation. It is coming due to summation over that t to the power minus 4 that you have. So that term is coming from there. Okay, but as I told you, we can just ignore it. This is just a constant term. Okay, so fine. So what we discussed so far, let's just try to recap. So we discussed the classical stochastic multi-arm bandit problem, and we kind of assumed the 0-1 reward. We went to a very simple setting, and we discussed one particular algorithm, which is the upper confidence bound algorithm. Okay, and this particular algorithm is basically works the way we have described this particular algorithm. This particular algorithm works only for the case when the rewards are either 0 or 1. That means when you pull an arm, when you pull a particular arm, you either get the reward of 0 or you get a particular reward of arm 1. In particular, it works only for Bernoulli distribution. Right, but in principle I may have various cases where I don't have the Bernoulli distribution, but I have something more complicated. Right, my rewards distribution may be more complicated. The best the more generalized distribution is what is called the normal distribution. Right, so this particular algorithm will not work. In that particular case, we kind of use the UCB normal algorithm, and the idea is essentially the same, that you are going to build the upper confidence bounds. The only thing that you will be requiring is that instead of that particular term that you had, square root of 2ln t by ni, this is what was the exploration term. By the way, I kind of forgot to tell you is that if you really think about it, right, this term is very special term, 2ln t divided by ni. Okay, what is ni? Ni is the number of times you have pulled the arm I. Okay, so if ni is high, this term is going to be low. If ni is high, this term is going to be low. If ni is low, this term is going to be high. So this is also this term is also what is called the exploration term. It is actually, promoting the exploration that we are saying. So where, ni is driving the exploration. So if ni is, let's say, really low, that means you should really explore this arm. And if you really think about it, I had two terms, right? When I computed the upper confidence bound, I had mu IT hat plus this term, right? What is this term? This term is whatever reward I have gathered so far. So this term is called the exploitation term. So the UCB algorithm is kind of trying to balance both exploitation term and exploration term at each and every round. Okay, and in UCB normal algorithm, it's just that how this particular exploration term changes. Okay, now there are, although we kind of did not talk about these constants, if I really think about it, these constants can be again reduced, and the idea is to use KL-UCB. So KL-UCB is just another version of UCB algorithm where we kind of use the KL divergence. What is interesting is this Thompson sampling algorithm. And I want to shed a little bit more light on this Thompson sampling algorithm. So if you know, if I talk about any machine learning algorithm, then any learning algorithm, I don't know if you're familiar with or not, machine learning algorithm, we kind of see it through two views. One is what is called the frequentist approach, and another is what is called the Bayesian approach. Right? So in frequentist approach, what we do in frequentist approach, we try to maximize the mean, right? So that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to pull our arm with which has highest. So we kind of in the UCB kind of algorithm, we kind of only worried about the mean. Okay, so upper confidence bound algorithms are what are called the frequentist approach. What are the Bayesian approaches? So how the Bayesian approaches works? In the Bayesian approaches, we have what is called the prior distribution. And then we have the posterior distribution. And we kind of choose a certain thing which kind of maximizes this posterior distribution. Okay, and this keeps on updating on the prior based thing. So Thompson sampling algorithm is one such algorithm which is based on the Bayesian approach. Okay, so it tries to pull the arm which kind of maximizes this posterior distribution, and it maintains some kind of distribution again depending on how the rewards are generated. Is it Bernoulli distribution, is it normal distribution, and so on and so forth. Based on that, I keep my prior distribution and maximize my posterior distribution. Bayes UCB algorithm is something which kind of does both. Okay, so it is kind of mix of Bayesian approaches and frequentist approaches. So the essential idea is that you know, all these algorithms which are trying to solve these things, they are basically, see, ultimately the regret cannot be better than log t. But what they are trying to do, they are trying to achieve better and better constants. Okay, or they kind of do some experiments which shows that which particular algorithm is performing better. That's how it is. Okay, so my slides are over, but since I have 5 more, I have 15 more minutes, so let me just tell you some of the interesting stuff. But before that, any questions?
Participants, if you have any question, please ask.
Okay. So, let me spend some time on giving some, you know, interesting facts about multi-arm. Any questions?
Any participant want to ask any question, please. I think there is no person who want to ask the question.
Okay. So, shall we continue for some let me just tell the you know, interesting things about the multi-arm bandit problem. So as I told you that we kind of discussed a very simple variant of multi-arm bandit problem where we had the 0-1 reward. and we kind of we had we had, so this is called the classical bandit setting, and we have already talked about it a lot. Let me tell you some of the variants of multi-arm bandit problem. So this will tell you, what kind of research is happening. So no matter which conferences I attend, I have been the PC member of various good conferences. For example, let's take AAAI or NIPS or ICML. No, so you can pick any of your core A-star conferences. This you will see lots of papers which will be on multi-arm bandit problem, and they will be solving some variant or the other. Okay, so let me shed some light on some of the variants of these multi-arm bandit problems. So one particular variant that I have been working on is what is called the sleeping bandit, and these names are really cool. So what is called the sleeping bandits problem? Okay, so I'm talking about various kinds of variant here. So what is a sleeping bandits problem? Again, a classical multi-arm bandit problem. We kind of assumed in the classical multi-arm bandit problem that each, you have various arms available at each time t, and you are pulling the arm. In sleeping bandit problem, what happens is that at each particular time, instead of all the arms available to you to pull, you have only subset of arms available. Right? Where this problem you kind of find fit is, consider the crowdsourcing problem that we discussed. Okay, so now what you're doing is that, as soon as you post a particular task, as I told you that imagine the workers acting as the arms. As soon as you post a particular task, the workers start working on it, right? And let's say there is a certain time duration for which these workers are actually doing the task. Okay, now for that particular time duration, all these workers to which you have given the task, they kind of go away from your crowdsourcing platform. They are no longer available for performing the next task. Right? So in that particular case, when you talk about the sleeping bandits problem, if you remember the regret notion, we said that we will be doing best against one single arm. So that particular notion does not work here. Why? Because at each time you have the subset of arms only available. How do you solve certain problems? Okay, how do you solve such kind of problems? How do you define the regret? How do you come up with an algorithm to which solve this problem? So again, lots of things here. You have the subset, whether the subset is coming up adversarially, stochastically, crowdsourcing, what it is, and so on and so forth. So based on that, you have tons of paper in this particular variant. The second variant that is really interesting is what is called the bandits with knapsack. Okay, so what is the bandits with knapsack problem? So as I guess we all are familiar with the knapsack problem, where you have lots of items, and each item has certain valuation and each item has certain cost associated to it, or weight. Right? And you want to keep these items in your knapsack so as to maximize this weight subject to the constraint, so as to maximize these values subject to the constraint that weight does not exceed what is called the capacity of the knapsack. Now imagine that these items are your arms, and each arm, so far we have assumed that each arm is associated with certain rewards that you don't know, but each arm is now associated with certain reward and certain weight. Again, you don't know this, right? So now which arm you should pull, that means which item should you keep it in the knapsack such that you kind of, satisfy this knapsack constraint that the weight does not exceed the capacity. Again, this particular problem is a very important problem in the crowdsourcing model. So again, you can, I guess, come up with different applications, but crowdsourcing is something which is naturally fitting this particular variant where, imagine that this particular requester that you have and the workers you have, workers does certain job with some quality QI, but they also ask you the money. And each worker kind of incurs, to hire each worker, you kind of incur a cost of CI. Okay, but as a requester, you have what is called the budget constraint. Right, so then you can easily formulate this problem with the with respect to the knapsack version, where you want to maximize the quality of the work done subject to the constraint, then you do not exceed your budget. Obviously, higher the quality, higher would be the cost, but you cannot hire them because you will be, you may, there may be a danger that you may go out of the budget. Right, so then it's bandits with knapsack. Again, our original formulation UCB kind of algorithm doesn't work. You have to tweak the algorithm in such a way that you kind of capture both qualities and cost, and the constraint is also satisfied. The third and last variant, which I would like to talk to you about, which we have recently published, is called the ballooning bandit framework. So we are still expecting a journal thing here, but let me just tell you because it's really interesting. So what is a ballooning bandit problem? As I told you, these names are really cool. So what is a ballooning bandit problem is that we have kind of assumed that the arms are fixed, like the number of arms are fixed. So we assume that there are n number of arms available. There are many cases, there are many applications where this n is actually not fixed, and in ballooning bandit problem, it actually grows over a period of time. So first time pe there will be one arm available, second time pe there will be two arms available, third time pe there will be three times available, fourth time pe four arms available, and so on and so forth, and they may actually kind of grow linearly with time, capital T. Right, so here the exploration of each and every arm does not work, because how many arms will you explore? You are going to incur a very high regret in this case, right? So how do you devise an algorithm in such a case? You cannot really explore. You have to kind of assume something on these coming arms. And the application for this particular ballooning bandits framework, I really like the application. The application is the product reviews. Okay, so imagine that you have the website, let's say Amazon website, and if you really if you've really seen the Amazon website, when you go for an item, you kind of see the reviews, best reviews, right? And these reviews play a very, very important role, because this is how the user judge the quality of the item. Right, so now the question is, given the limited slots that are available to Amazon, which review the Amazon site should pick up? Okay, and how the arms are growing. So now imagine that each review is actually an arm. Okay, so over a period of time, I'm getting new and new and new and new reviews. Okay, and whenever I post a review, somebody clicks whether it was a useful or it was not a useful. So I also get a feedback. So I want to actually show a review which is most important to the users. So how do I come up with such a review when I have large amount of reviews available for the products? So this is the ballooning bandits framework. Again, as I told you, there is dueling bandit framework, there is contextual bandit framework, there are lots and lots of frameworks. So maybe you can go and read, and if you have any doubts, please feel free to drop me an email. My email ID is shweta@iitrpr.ac.in. That's it from my side. Thank you. Questions?
So if you have any questions, you can ask. No questions? So I would like to thank Dr. Shweta Jain for such a wonderful lecture. I think the pace of the lecture was so perfect that everyone can easily comprehend the subject. And we will continue this journey tomorrow also. Yes. With adversarial rewards. So I again invite ma'am for tomorrow's session so that we can continue the session tomorrow also. And so we will stop the session here and continue the journey tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Sure.
So for I think we should stop the session here and take a break. Thank you, and thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful lecture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
This conference is no longer being recorded.